when you start shifting the things that you do with the way that you're thinking, your potential just grows so much bigger because you're giving yourself permission to go do that thing that you're afraid of doing.
Hey girlfriends, and welcome to another episode of Tracy Gold Show. Today we are talking about confidence as midlife women and beyond. So for many women, midlife can give us quite a knock. We can often feel like we're invisible. We can feel like we're not with it any longer. We can feel like, what is my life anyway, and what am I going to do with the rest of this half of my life, or even kind of last third of our lives? But there are ways to grow our confidence, and there definitely are ways to build ourselves up so that we can really thrive at this time and have our best lives yet. And to talk about this, I've actually brought in Lucy Brummett. She is a midlife coach, and she specializes in helping women to grow their confidence at midlife and beyond. So Lucy, it's so wonderful to have you in the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So Lucy, before we get stuck into like all the things that we experience around confidence as women at midlife and beyond, tell us a little bit about your story. And because I believe that, our stories are the reason why we do the work that we do.
Yes. Well, my story actually started back in 2000. When I was pregnant with my youngest, I had a condition called Bell's palsy during pregnancy. And I was the very select few of the people that did not recover from it completely. So for about 14 years, I was left with a smile that I wasn't really pleased with, and I had no treatment. There's no cure for it. And it wasn't uncommon as someone having a pregnancy to, have something like that. And what Bell's palsy is it'll leave you looking like you're paralyzed on half of your face. So it's very devastating, and it really shoots your confidence levels. So for many years, I was very uncomfortable taking pictures, taking photos. I was always the picture taker in the family, but I never wanted to be in front of the camera. And then in 2014, I met this wonderful doctor here in North Carolina, and he gave me my confidence back because he was able to help me through just temporary treatments that actually made me confident again. And for about 2 years, I went ahead and just built my confidence back up. I actually took up archery as a hobby.
Wow.
And I, got trained by the best professional archers. I entered a tournament. And when I did that for myself, because of the confidence that I got through my doctor, it just kind of set me forward to getting back into writing. And writing had always been a part of my life.
Yeah. And so now you share your experiences with women and help them to grow their confidence in their lives, right?
I do. And I love working with midlife women especially, and I like what you do because you target the 40, 50, 60 crowd. And even though we attract the younger women, I think it's especially important for this age bracket that we're talking about, because a lot of the women that I have coached and I've helped, they are women that remind me of who I was, say 20 years ago, and not really knowing how to navigate the process because of not having confidence.
Lucy, it's interesting because in your case, you found this doctor who was able to assist you. And so it took that impediment away. What happens when women have things that cannot be taken away? How do they grow their confidence despite that? And then also, did you, even though that impediment was taken away, had a lack of confidence become a habit for you? So it was about kind of a reprogramming of your mind. I know that's a loaded question. So two questions there in one go.
Sure. And you might have to remind me, but I would say mindset definitely played a big part of it, because I did get into the habit of not having confidence. And what happens with that is when you're in pity mode, self-pity mode, you just don't have any desire to even try to help yourself, because you're so stuck in that way of feeling that you think it's almost hopeless, like you don't know what to do.
Yes. Yes.
So for women that don't know how to get out of it, it really is about reprogramming your mind. And what I learned from my coach and other coaches as well in the past is that when you start shifting the things that you do with the way that you're thinking, your
Mm,
potential just grows so much bigger because you're giving yourself permission to go do that thing that you're afraid of doing,
mm,
or you're afraid of people judging you, or not feeling worthy enough, or you're not qualified enough. So when you start putting practices into your daily routine, is what I would like to say, whether it's in the morning, whether it's in the evening, whether it's both, it really starts making a way for you to gain that confidence and go on to that next level of whatever it is that you're pursuing, whether it's a
mhm.
career or anything else.
So, Lucy, am I understanding you correctly that even though your impediment was taken away, was resolved, there was still, because you were so used to, because you were in pity mode,
Mhm.
you were so used to thinking that way, that even though the so-called problem was taken away, you were still left with those feelings, and that was what you had to work with. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, it took a lot because, when I first went to the doctor, I was doing a lot of research and I had actually come across the story of Mary Jo Buttafuoco. I don't know if you remember that story from years ago. She had paralysis on her face, and it just took me into that realm of, possibilities of what could help my
Mm,
condition. And that's how I found
mm,
my doctor. But I think with the way that I had been feeling from 2000, the year 2000 to 2014, you're talking about 14 years of something to work with. And when he actually gave me a glimmer of hope, I was still skeptical when I went to see him.
mm,
And then when he gave me the treatment, it takes about a week or two for it to kick in. I was just amazed. My smile will never be what I had, but it was so much better.
mm.
And I thought, well, he's given me hope. He's given me something that I can work with. So it's up to me to really make that decision to go for the things that I want to go for. And that all
Yeah.
started back in 2016 when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to do something online.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So, to my second, well, it was my first question, so we answered the second one. What happens then when you're working with women who don't, there isn't a doctor who can take that away, or it's something so internal, or it's something that's happened to them that's left them scarred emotionally or mentally. What about that? What about coming to terms with that thing and growing our confidence regardless?
I would say with someone that say they have and that of course they're left with and that it's much more severe and they have such a feeling of like I will never be able to do anything because this isn't going away.
Mm,
It really comes to the idea of accepting, like stepping into that acceptance that it isn't going away. But sometimes you need a little bit deeper help. And, life
mm,
coaching is one thing, but if it's so internal that they just can't even make that shift, I always tell people too, that there's nothing wrong with going to seek medical professional help from like a therapist that can help you
mhm,
work through those things, especially when it's much deeper and it's internal at such a level. That's always something that people can do and see if that works first, because
mm,
sometimes as a life coach, you're kind of like, okay, well, we're not a therapist, we're not medical professionals. And I always like to steer women towards that if that's for them. Now if you have a woman on the other side that they still don't know how to get out of it, but they're not at that level where they need like an actual therapist. Well, then that's when I come into play and we discuss ways of things that they can do in their own home that can get them to make those shifts. And
mm.
one of the things that I feel strongly about is always writing things down in a notebook or a journal and just seeing how you're feeling and then checking in with yourself daily on that.
Yeah, yeah. So, Lisa, I'd love to get to some of those practical tips that you have, things that women can do in their own home. But before that, I would just like to kind of explore something. So, I was a stylist for 17 years, and I styled all different types of women, different body shapes, different ages. Majority of the women were 40 plus. And what I found so interesting, and this happened time and time again, where, women had been on a weight loss journey, as an example, and then came to me because now they've reached their goal weight. But when they looked in the mirror, you see, they would still dress for the bigger woman that they were. That the mind and the body had not connected, that it had not become truly integrated within them. And that makes me think of a situation like, even with what you're sharing, is that even though you had the treatment, there was still work to be done so that you could internalize, like, hey, now this is something that's really good that's happened to me. And the last 14 years is now going into a new season. So I'm just aware of that. Like, how I mean, have you seen that as a common thing where we do the things on the external, but the internal hasn't caught up with it yet?
I see it all the time. We all experience that as women. It's so easy to go ahead and like you said, wear the big clothes that we had, especially with weight loss. And being someone that has been into fitness, it's part of my daily life. I know what it feels like to look in the mirror and not like your stomach, and you're like, okay, I can't wear that outfit because
Mm,
my stomach isn't perfect. So we're always in that mindset of thinking that we're not perfect yet, so let's just resort back to the old way of dressing.
mm,
And for that, with women, I recommend, actually going to a personal stylist. I've had the experience, and it wasn't until you had like a professional tell you the things that were suited for your particular body type and the things that you can do to enhance it, even if you're going through that season of working
yeah,
out, getting fit. Even though you're not perfect, you can really feel like you're perfect depending on the clothing that you're wearing. But before you
yeah.
can even do that, right, you have to think about, like, well, what do I believe to be true about myself? How do I feel
Mm,
when I put on this blouse or a dress? And if you feel bad about it, that takes work. So for
yeah.
something like that, I like to say, I get into the habit of daily affirmations. And at first you
Mm.
sound a little silly to yourself, but I make it a
Yeah,
practice.
they can sound pretty. I mean, I do them. I was like, really, sometimes.
Right, because you're like, yeah, is this true?
Mm,
But one of the things that I always try to say is I have a beautiful stomach, because that is the part that is the hardest for, I think, any woman, especially in midlife, to really tone up the way that you want it to look like.
yeah.
So if you start looking into the mirror and really looking at who you are inside first and loving on yourself, telling yourself, I am worthy, I have what it takes to be successful, I can do great things. If you start really saying that and vocalizing it out loud, your mind is paying attention to that, and it's going
Yeah.
to sink in and become internal.
Yeah, yeah. Lucy, I thought, what I used to do with my clients, it was always such a very interesting exercise, is I would get them to stand in front of the mirror full length and name three things that they loved about their body shape. And their hands, feet, and face didn't count. And we would wait there for some time sometimes, and sometimes it wouldn't happen. But the point of that was, and of course, if I asked them the reverse of what things you don't like, they could give me a very long list. But the point was to shift our own focus, right? Because we would, as women, we tend to be very self-critical about ourselves. We tend to look in the mirror and see the parts of ourselves that we don't like. And what I'm starting to experience also as I get older, and because I'll be 48 in November, the changes in my body, and exactly what you said about loving my stomach. I'm like, I decided I was going to love my stomach, and it's amazing how that's working.
It is,
And
right?
focusing, and like when I work out now, I'm focusing on getting stronger and fitter, not focusing on losing the tummy, but just that shift of focus has been so powerful for me, as opposed to like always looking in the mirror and looking at that and like, oh, feeling so terrible about that, and just rather shifting my focus. I am noticing a difference in my tummy now, actually.
Yes, yes, and it works. And
It really
especially,
does, because I think we letting go of some of the emotion that we hold on to, right,
that's
around it.
right. Because if you think about it, if you are so focused on what you don't like, even when you go to the gym or you're working at home, you're
Mm,
really still thinking about that in your head. And if you're going for that extra set, of round of exercises that you're trying to do, that might prevent you from actually even challenging yourself to do better with that last set of
yes.
exercises, because you're like, okay, that's good enough, you know? But
Yeah.
when you tell
Yeah.
yourself you love what you see, or you're like, "I'm sexy today. Wow, I look really beautiful." And it's hard to
Mm,
say that because we don't want to sound like, oh, we're conceited, and just bragging about ourselves. But if we do give ourselves, or not if, when we give ourselves permission to do that, that is
mm.
the game changer. And right now, you just validated something that I've always believed in, and you see it's working
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Lucy, I one of the things that I hear from women a lot as we get older is the fear of becoming invisible. There is a huge fear around that, of becoming invisible to people, of becoming irrelevant. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I think the fear of becoming invisible happens because as we're getting older, sometimes you get into the mindset of like, my kids are grown. They're going to be out of the house, for someone that does have kids, or I've gotten so far in this career. Like, does anybody even care what I do anymore? And sometimes when women think that, it's because they want something more out of their life. And what I
Mm,
have found with some women is they're in a traditional job that's honorable, that's paid the bills, that's really gotten them, further, in their career, but they're not happy. And they never go for that thing that will make them feel like they are visible to the people that love them, or to their friends, their girlfriends, whatever it is. But if they start thinking about what it is that they really want out of the season that they're in
mm.
currently, I think that will make them feel like there's hope to not feeling like they're invisible anymore.
Yeah. You know, one of my guests, Deborah Darling, she lives in South Africa, and she's a model, and she became a model, in her 50s, and she's about to get to her 60th birthday. And we were talking about this exact thing of feeling invisible, and she was really challenging. And she said, like, what are we doing to not be invisible? You know, are
Right.
we shrinking into ourselves because of our fear, right? Because of our fear of being invisible, we're actually becoming invisible, as opposed to, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're an introvert you suddenly have to become an extrovert. No, but you can take up your space, and you can, choose to live the life that you want to live. And just by setting yourself free and knowing that, hey girl, you've got like a whole half a life still to live, you know
Yes.
if you're
And
lucky. Like, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to shrink
exactly.
into a lesser version of yourself just because of the name, the date on your birth certificate?
That's right. And that's what
you know
happens. I know, like, growing up, I would look at women my age. I am 50, and I thought this was old. Back then when I was so
Hmm.
young, I had no idea. And
But
now
we
be
all did, Lucy.
right.
We
We all
always
thought,
thought our parents were so old and their
yes,
friends, and it was so gross, you know?
yes, yes, right? And it's like, it's so not that way. And you're right. I'm glad you talked about fear, because fear does make you shrink, because that's
Hmm.
one of the biggest blocks that we all have. We're too afraid to go for it. We're too afraid to ask for the raise. We're too afraid to try the new thing.
Hmm.
Like, I always go back to, when I told you about archery, I had no like experience in archery. I wasn't even going to the gym. I was the girl
Wow.
growing up. I would get picked last
Wow.
in gym class. I was like, it was so embarrassing. I hated it because I didn't have confidence in my
Hmm.
teens. And I went and started thinking about that, because I thought, you know what? What would happen if I found a sport that I could actually do as an adult? I am not Lucy that's a teenager. I'm Lucy as an adult in midlife. What can I do? So it
Yeah.
wasn't until my 40s. I just went for it. It took me a year actually to really decide. I wouldn't recommend that. I would just say go for it sooner.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
doing things that will kind of get you out of your comfort zone will make a difference. And you will never know unless you try. That's what I tell all the women. And do you want to live life always wondering, like, I wonder what would have happened if I would have went for that thing? But if
Yeah.
if you allow fear to just always take over, you will always feel like you're shrinking, and you will be invisible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so many times I've heard, very mature adults say that we often look back on our lives and regret the things that we didn't do, not the things that we've done. And I think that, like, I decided just the other day that I'm going to start hula hooping.
Oh, how fun.
I mean, I went to
Why
Central
not?
Park because I live in New York City. and there's this part of Central Park that has these skate, like roller skates and people dancing, and there's a DJ, there's a DJ, and there were some hula hoops sitting on the side, and I was like, oh wow! So I went and found out whose they were, and I want to try this thing. And of course, this young girl comes out. I mean, she was a little bitty girl. Boy, she was going for it. She was looking like she was hardly doing a thing, and it was just whipping around her. And I tried it, and I was like, okay, so it didn't fall down straight away.
Right,
It's
right.
like, and I was doing it, and then I looked up online, and apparently it's a really great exercise for the tummy as well, for the
It
waist.
is.
And you get these weighted ones, and in fact, they're easier than to keep up than these tiny little kiddie ones. And I mean, I saw this other woman coming. She must have been in her, I'd say she's probably in her 60s, and the owner of the hula hoops, and she was just walking around with this thing, and I was like, wow, that looks like so much fun. Now, look, either I can go into a whole internal dialogue about how I can't do that and why should I be able to do that, or I can go, hey, like, it's not going to cost me a lot to get one and try it and
That's
see if I
right.
like it. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. But what if I love it? And I think
Exactly.
I may have to have a show about hula hooping.
That's
It's
right.
like it's
And
like archery. It's like your thing was archery. So find that thing
that's
that you
right.
can really challenge yourself. And what I have also found, so I'm following a neuroscience doctor, neurologist, and
Uh-huh.
he's saying that the best thing you can do for your brains to prevent Alzheimer's and other diseases is to do things outside of your comfort zone,
All the time.
especially things with hand-eye coordination. So when it requires coordination, it's actually creating new pathways in your brain, creating a whole bunch of more synapses, if that's the right terminology, I'm not sure, blah blah blah. I love these geeky things. And then what happens is that even if you lose a few, it's not that big of a deal because you got so many of them.
That's right. And
So, like,
that it's
imagine what we could start doing.
exactly because you get into the habit of feeling like you can't do anything else or you're too
Yeah.
old or that's for the
Mm,
younger generation. No, we're still youthful no matter what
yeah,
age. And you've heard that before.
yeah.
Age is, just a number.
Mm,
And when you find something like you found hula hooping, I bet you felt great. I bet you felt like energized and empowered and probably not
yeah.
even embarrassed because you liked what
No,
you were doing,
I
right?
wasn't at all.
So that's what
I was
it's
like,
all about.
okay. Mm,
Yeah, and just, getting in touch with that side of you that brings back like even memories of when you were a little girl. You're going back to
mm,
being a kid again. And if you think about the kids, when they go do something, they're not having this internal dialogue that we're having. Most of the time, they're just going
yeah,
out and trying, to do a sport or whatever, not even thinking about it. So as adults, like when we have the opportunity to get to do something, it's just
yeah.
deciding to do it. That's all it
It's
is.
amazing. So, Leslie, let's talk about the woman who is really struggling with her confidence. You mentioned that you have some very practical things that women can do from their home. What are those things?
The first thing that I recommend for everyone that I speak with, is to get a notebook and a pen. It's cheap, it's easy, it sits at
Mm,
your desk or wherever you sit at it in your home. Maybe it's even at the kitchen table. And you start with a daily practice of either writing something that you're grateful for. You can have a gratitude journal. You could have what I call, based on a book that I read, and I can't think of the name of the book right now. I think it was The Artist's Way. And she
Oh,
did
I
it.
love the
Is that
artist
the
way.
one?
The morning pages.
The
Morning
morning pages.
pages.
You
Yes,
know
the
what I'm
morning
talking
pages
about.
changed my life.
Yes,
Yes.
me too. And I loved it. And my morning pages sometimes, because we're not perfect, we're all imperfect people. Sometimes they're afternoon pages or evening pages on my off
Yeah.
days, but that's okay. Nothing is wrong with that.
Mm,
So, what I tell women is get that notebook and that pen and get started with a morning routine. Before you
mm,
do anything else, take time for yourself. So, start off there. And then find a couple other things that you can do. I always recommend at least three things, and
mm,
it's baby steps, one step at a time.
mm,
We talked about the positive affirmations, and that is going straight to the mirror if you're comfortable with that, or just sitting in a chair and saying it out loud. Tell yourself the things that you love about yourself. Another
mm,
one that's a game changer, I think, for some women is if they start looking at everything they have accomplished to this day instead of seeing what they haven't. because if they
Yeah.
start looking at what they've won at, that really will build up your confidence even more because it'll give you less of a reason to, make excuses.
Yeah,
And
because if I've accomplished A, B, and C, then I can accomplish C, D, and F, right?
that's
Like I
right.
can actually, I've proven it's a proven concept.
Yes, and it's
Mm,
just so great when you're able to do that. And my other thing that I would say is physical exercise of any kind is really going to help you, whether you're trying to lose weight or anything like that. What it does help women with, and men too, is once they get into that physical movement, they can go to something like that when they're feeling low, like they're in a low state of
mm,
energy, or say you want to work on a project or you want to start your dream, say you're new to it or your goal. And if you're feeling kind of like less than, what
mm.
worked for me was going and getting physical. I would go to the gym and then you're just like re energized after physical movement of any kind, even if it's just dancing for 10 minutes. It'll elevate your mood. So it's always about, like my coach, Cami, always told me, it's about making that 1% shift and moving from one state to the next state of energy. And that works.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, if you're having a really bad day, put on some music and dance, or
Mhm.
go or do some yoga, do some breathing, get into your body. Because I also think that that resets our mind somehow, Lucy.
It
I don't quite
does.
understand how it works, but it does seem to reset our mind.
Yes, when you do any kind of meditation or you get into prayer, if you're into prayer, I I feel that it really calms the spirit. And one app that I would recommend that I really like using is the Insight Timer app. And it has like a variety of meditations that you can use to really just get relaxed and calm. And even at the end of the day, when you've done everything or you feel like you've done everything, it's really nice to actually fall asleep too. If you're not,
Yeah.
into that heavy meditation, for 10 minutes, you'll actually fall asleep in no time. And that's
Mm,
even great for
yeah.
anyone, I think.
Yeah. And the physical stuff, Lucy, so that's what I was actually alluding to, is there also a connection between physical exercise and getting physical and resetting our minds?
Yes, yes, there is, because if you think about it, if you're in a state of feeling like you're overwhelmed or feeling like you're not qualified to do something, by stopping what you're doing and going into that physical movement, you're going to start feeling happier. And like you said, whether
Mm,
you're doing yoga, whether you're walking around the block, nature is a powerful thing. That's one thing I actually love telling people to do, is just get out in your neighborhood, take
mm.
a walk. Like you go to Central Park, right? And
Yeah.
doesn't that feel great just to be
Oh,
outside, and it just boosts your
absolutely.
mood and you feel
Yeah.
great afterwards, right? So when you
Yeah.
return, say you go back, to your home, you're like, hey, I feel empowered. I feel like energized. Now let
Yeah.
me tackle that thing that I didn't want to do because I didn't feel like I was qualified enough, or I just didn't feel like doing it. Now you
Yeah.
have a better feeling toward whatever it is that
Mm.
you want to do.
Yes, that is very true. Because when I go into the park, also if I'm stuck in something in my head, or I'm not feeling great, or I do a daily walk actually in Central Park, and it just resets
Wonderful.
me. It's amazing. So, Lucy, thank you so much. This has been really inspirational. Where can people find you if they want to learn more? I know you have a blog, and I think we found each other on Instagram, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
how can people follow you?
Sure. They can go to my website. It's lucybrummett.com. And if they want to find me on Instagram, I am at Lucy_Brummett. And I am there, and they're welcome to follow me there and go to my website. And I have all kinds of things there for them to read as well.
Fantastic. And so I will be putting your IG handle onto the screen. And for those of you who have a description box, depending on the platform you're on, then you can go to the description box and the link to her website will be there as well. And for those of you who are new to the show, welcome and keep watching, because we have so many amazing interviews with inspirational women sharing their stories that will help and inspire you to live your best life at any age, and to truly know that you do not have to be defined by your age. If you do want to stay in touch with us, the best way to do that is to go to tracygoldshow.com, and there will be a pop-up, there will be an option to join our insiders list, and that will ensure that you get a weekly newsletter with all the updates, all the replays, and all the fun things that we're up to. So it's Tracy, Tracy, show no, Tracy Gold, Gold is in the color show.com. And we look forward to connecting with you there. Thank you so much, Lucy. It's been absolutely amazing. And I feel inspired, ready to go and do something physical now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you watching, and I hope you found it inspirational. Have a good day. Take care.